My question was about abortion, and I just wanted to know why exactly do you think a first trimester fetus has moral value?
Okay, so a first trimester fetus has moral value because whether you consider it a potential human life or a full-on human life, it has more value than just a cluster of cells. If left to its natural processes, it will grow into a baby. So the real question is, where do you draw the line? So you're going to draw the line at the heartbeat, because it's very hard to draw the line at the heartbeat. There are people who are adults who are alive because of a pacemaker. They need some sort of outside force generating their heartbeat. Okay, are you going to do it based on brain function? Okay, well, what about people who are in a coma? Should we just kill them? Right? The problem is, anytime you draw any line other than the inception of the child, you end up drawing a false line that can also be applied to people who are adults. So either human life has intrinsic value or it doesn't. I think we both agree that adult human life has intrinsic value. Can we start from that premise?
I believe that sentience is what gives something moral value, not necessarily being a human alone.
Okay, because, when you're asleep, can I stab you?
I'm still considered sentient when I'm asleep.
Okay, if you are in a coma from which you may awake, can I stab you?
Well then, no. I guess not. I mean,
I'm glad you answered that, because I have no interest in actually murdering you.
But that's still potential sentience, and it's still a potential.
I agree. It is potential sentience. You know what else is potential sentience? Being a fetus.
Yeah.
How do you say that some people don't have privilege when you basically just said that trans people aren't valid? They're not a thing. They're just girls pretending to be boys or boys pretending to be girls.
Okay. Oh, someone's excited. Okay.
It's biological, but gender is a completely different thing.
No, gender is not disconnected from sex. So.
It's not completely disconnected, but it's still a cultural thing. It's still from society.
Okay. No, it is not in the mind. Okay, you're not a man if you think you're a man. And I didn't say pretending, or if I did, I shouldn't have said pretending. Let me amend.
You said playing.
Okay, I said a boy who thinks he's a girl. That's the usual phraseology I use. Not playing. I usually say a boy who thinks he's a girl or a girl who thinks he's a boy, which is technically what we're talking about here. As far as the actual psychological issues at play, it used to be called gender dysphoria or gender identity disorder. Now they call it gender dysphoria. The idea that sex or gender are malleable is not true. Okay, and I'm not denying your humanity if you're a transgender person. I am saying that you are not the sex to which you claim to be. You're still a human being, and you're a human being with an issue that I wish you Godspeed in dealing with in whatever way you see fit. But if you are going to dictate to me that I'm supposed to pretend that men are women and women are men, no. My answer is no. I'm not going to modify basic biology because it threatens your subjective sense of what you are.
Okay, but you're still saying these kids should not be accepted because they don't really fit in either place? They can't just
I'm saying that the Boy Scouts have a standard. You must be a biological boy to be a Boy Scout. You have to be a boy to be a Boy Scout.
Where's that written though? Okay.
In the name Boy Scouts. Because this is a very because for all of human history, boy meant boy and girl meant girl. Boy did not mean girl. And if I call you a moose, are you suddenly a moose? Okay, if I redefine our terms. No, yes, that's right. Men and women are a completely different thing. This is true. Have you ever met a man or a woman? They're completely different.
It's a completely different thing. You can't just say you're a cat. It's not a thing. It's genders. It's not saying you're.
Okay, why is that? I don't understand. Why? Okay, let me ask you this. Okay, I won't ask you how old. I will ask you how old you are. Okay, because you're young enough that it's probably not insulting to ask you. So.
I'm 22, so I'm probably gonna be naive, right?
No. Why aren't you 60? Why aren't you 60?
Because
And why can't you identify as 60? What is the problem with you identifying as 60?
Because it's not the same as gender. You can't just.
You're right. Age is significantly less important than gender. You can't magically change your gender. You can't magically change your sex. You can't magically change your age.
As a woman and somebody going into the healthcare field, I personally don't, it's on your opinion on abortion. I personally don't think that I could have an abortion just because morally I feel like for myself it wouldn't be the right choice. But how do you defend your opinion as a white, well-off, religious man? How do you defend your, telling a woman what she can do with her body?
Because evil things are still evil even if I'm a white, well-off, religious man. And good things are still good, even if I'm a white, well-off religious man. So this is one of these this is one of these identity politics points that I really, I don't mean to come down harshly on you, I don't, but it is a point that I really have serious moral qualms with. I think it's quite terrible. The reason being that the people who were fighting against enslavement of black people were a bunch of well-off white men for the most part. Right? And those people were saying, this is a moral sin. This is a moral blot. They weren't living in the South. They didn't own plantations. They didn't live the lives of the plantation owners. They said, this is evil, and we are here to stop it. Right? When you see something that you think is morally wrong happening, especially when you're talking about the taking of a human life, like, listen, I think that you shouldn't go around randomly killing homeless people. I just have this view. I'm not a homeless person. Most of the people who randomly kill homeless people are probably not of my economic strata, my religious view, or my, I don't know whether they're of my skin color or not. I have no idea what the actual sociological breakdown of homeless killer serial murderers is. But I would suggest that my identity has nothing to do with what is right or wrong. And this is what Western civilization used to be about. Western civilization used to be about the idea that, yes, I'm not a woman in the healthcare field, but you and I can have a conversation about what's right and wrong because this is the nature of human reason. The nature of human reason, the nature of right and wrong is that you and I can talk about what's right and wrong and that I don't retreat into my identity. If we can all retreat into our identity and our morality is now centered around that identity, morality doesn't exist at all. We break down into a society of fragmented atoms where I can't even say, like, you're torturing a puppy in your backyard. I have nothing to say about that. I'm not a white woman who's in the healthcare field. I'm not going to do that. I refuse to surrender the idea that I can have a moral stance on issues that are of concern to society and of concern to the well-being of the United States simply because of the color of my skin or the nature of my genitalia. And honestly, I believe any view that feels differently is sexist, racist, and bigoted.
Let's say you own a pencil factory. I'm a worker in that pencil factory. You can have all the machinery, you can buy all the raw materials you want, but without me, and presumably many others like me, to assemble the pencils, all you would have is a pile of wood, yellow paint, graphite, rubber, and aluminum.
Okay.
That would be worth, and that is worth less than the pencil when you try and sell it. And yet, all of that value added by labor, apart from the wages that you give me, which, if we're being honest, there is a major power imbalance in our ability to negotiate that.
If all that putting the pencil together requires is basic use of your prefrontal cortex, then yes, your labor is alienable at lower rates than if you are a doctor. That's not the fault of the person who owns the machinery.
But if you didn't have workers like me and your pencil factory, and you were just one man.
But I do. I have millions of people who are willing to do that voluntarily for me.
If you're just one person trying to assemble pencils, you're not going to get very far. You need workers. Capital needs labor infinitely more than labor needs capital. That's why you have worker cooperatives where the workers are the ones...
I fundamentally disagree on the distinction between capital and labor. Capital is just a term for money. If you're talking about money, money does not grow from the ground. Money only has value because it was traded for labor at one point or the products of labor. So if I take my money and I buy machinery, I have invested my labor in doing that because I didn't get the money from nowhere. Even if I got it from my parents didn't get the money from nowhere. The people who built the machines required me to trade something of value to them in order for me to obtain the machines. The people who invented the machines required people to pay them in order to get the patent to that machine so they could build the machine. The problem that I'm seeing in what you're saying is you have still failed. If what you're talking about is a system of voluntarism, you still have not named any area in which we disagree, and yet you're telling me that you're a socialist and I'm a free marketer. So one of us has got this wildly wrong, and I'm pretty sure it's not me.
The differentiation I draw, and I'm not alone in this, I'm not one person trying to redefine anything, the differentiation I and many others like me draw between socialism and capitalism is that under capitalism, when you as the owner of the factory, you give me a wage. The wage could be $7.25, it could be $15, it could be whatever an hour, right? But you give me a wage, all the additional profit above the made from selling the pencils or whatever good you produce above what is reinvested into the company ultimately goes to you or the investors, those who own shares in the means of production.
Right.
Under socialism, those people are the workers, and the example I give, again, is cooperative enterprise.
No, those are the people who are investing the risk. So if they carry the risk, then they get the benefit. The owner of the factory carries the risk, therefore he gets the benefit. The workers in the company you mentioned, if that company were to go bankrupt, they would carry the risk as well as the benefit. If the company goes bankrupt, and this guy has to pay off all of his debts, the worker may lose his job, but he's not the one who's going to incur the debt of having gone bankrupt. If you incur risk, then you're the one who pays the downside. The worker does not pay the downside. Okay, it is the investor who pays the downside, who invested in all the machinery, who sunk millions of dollars into making your labor productive. Because guess what? Your labor is without that machinery. Gunk. Nothing. You don't have a pencil to put together. You don't got the wood. You don't got the paint. You don't got the rubber. You don't got the metal. You got nothing. Right? You're sitting there, standing outside, twiddling your thumbs. It required somebody to invest, who do you think put more in? The guy who spent millions of dollars buying all the machinery, leasing the place, making sure there was a management structure, doing the LLC formation, making sure all the tax code was in compliance, or you standing outside because you can stick a piece of graphite into a piece of wood? Now we're done. And just logically speaking, anytime you make something illegal that occurs, there will be more illegal instances of that thing happening. And I'm sure that, when slavery was legal, then, it was legal. That didn't make it either moral, decent, or right. Once it was made illegal, then I'm sure that everyone who was holding a slave was in violation of the law. So I guess there were more illegal holdings of slaves after we made slavery illegal. But there was less absolute slavery, which is the actual goal. Yeah, you can ask a follow-up, that's fine. That's fine.
An illegal holding of the slave, illegally holding a slave doesn't kill the slave and doesn't possibly kill the mother.
I don't think you want to go down the road where you're justifying slavery. I'm not justifying slavery.
I'm not justifying slavery. I'm saying that that the fact that something increases when you make it illegal is
the illegal activity the absolute level of the activity decreases, but what's left is going to be illegal just by logical necessity.
What's left is when the illegal activity that's left is very, very dangerous. Is that a good argument? Do you think that's a good argument or not a good argument?
Yes, if I have to wait, let's say that you make abortion illegal and there are 1 million abortions a year in the United States, and let's say at the high end, there are still 50,000 illegal abortions in the United States, but all the rest go to term. Okay, let's say that that's the case, because it's going to be hard to actually get an abortion if it's made illegal. Let's say there's still 50,000. You just saved 950,000 lives. That is a massive net win, obviously.
At the end of the speech, you talked about how you preach decency and you just encourage everyone to be a mensch. But in the middle of your speech, and you can call me out on being a liberal snowflake or whatever about my feelings, but then in the middle of your speech, I think this was hate speech. You made fun of transgenders. Well,
I made fun of one person who grabbed me by the back of the neck and threatened me with violence, to be fair.
Yes, but also Caitlyn Jenner, and you seem to be making, You were clearly making jokes at the expense of transgender people. So my question is, where do you draw the line between being a mensch and clearly offending people? Like, where do you draw the line?
Okay, so for me, if I coldly and clearly state a fact and you're offended by the fact, that's not me being responsible for offending you, that's me saying a fact and you being offended. As far as me making jokes about Zoe Tur, my general rule is that if somebody grabs me by the back of the neck and threatens me with violence on national television, I have the right to make fun of them. That's just as when I was at University of Wisconsin, if people are going to chant at me and yell at me, then I'm not going to treat them with courtesy because they are not deserving of courtesy. Courtesy is something that you earn by being courteous.
Okay, fine, I understand that, but it just seems a little bit hypocritical to brag about the fact that you openly humiliated someone on national television while also telling people to be mensches. I just think that's a little.
Well, let's put it this way. My belief is in mutually assured destruction. So if you're going to, if you attempt to again do me physical harm on national TV, then I'm not going to treat you with a level of respect that you have not earned. I'm treating you with respect, and we disagree, right? Because you're courteous. So thank you for that.
You said earlier that a lot of are uncomfortable looking at pictures of children that are being aborted. Yeah, I would say that you and many other would feel equally uncomfortable looking at pictures of Sandy Hook victims who were shot. How can you honestly stand up here and say that you support abortion, you support government intervention to make abortion illegal, which is designed to kill someone, and yet you can stand up here and say you don't want government intervention for guns, which are also designed to kill people?
Because guns are not designed to kill children. Guns are designed to kill bad guys if operated by a proper person. There's not an abortion in the world that doesn't end with the death of a baby. Honestly, the reason, I have no problem with looking at the pictures of gun violence victims other than the problems any other human being, left or right, would have with looking at those pictures, which is that they're horrific and deeply disturbing and very upsetting. But I don't feel any sense of guilt or avoidance. Like, I can't look at this picture because I bear some sort of responsibility for this. It is impossible not to look at a picture of an aborted baby and say this was disconnected from the act that I approve, because the act is the killing of the baby. There's no policy that I approve of that ends with the murder of children. Okay, there is a policy that is designed for the murder of children, which is what abortion is. Yeah, that's fine. You can have a quick follow-up. That's fine, sorry.
Okay, so but if all people, right, you said that once the cells come together, you said those are considered people, which I can understand. I can get
No, I said that's considered a human life.
A human life, right.
Yes.
Why is this human life being killed and another human life being killed by gun violence? Why is that any different?
Again, it's not a matter of the value of the human life being different. It's equally as evil and tragic and horrific and disgusting when people kill fully formed children who are outside the womb. My point is that the act that connects to the killing of the children is not connected to my position on guns. The act that connects to the killing of unborn babies is connected to the legalization of abortion. The reason that I want people to be able to exercise their Second Amendment rights is to shoot pieces of like the people who go into schools and shoot up children. Right? I have 2 kids. They both go to a Jewish school, which means they are on the target list for somebody out there. Right? Jewish schools are disproportionately targeted, unfortunately, in the United States. I went to a Jewish school when I was in high school. There were bomb threats legitimately every couple of months. In 1999, there was a white supremacist who drove by our Jewish day school, saw an armed guard outside, proceeded to drive away, went to the West Valley JCC, and shot up the West Valley JCC. The reason that I'm in favor of gun rights is because I want that armed guard outside carrying the gun to dissuade people from going inside the school and shooting the kid.
What's your formal education background? So I guess a lot of people don't know what your undergraduate degree was in.
So I was at UCLA in political science and then Harvard Law School.
Okay. So you don't have, you wouldn't consider yourself an expert in sociology?
I don't consider sociology a particularly expert field, but go ahead. I think I'm able to read a sociological study.
Study, but so you're not necessarily an expert.
Yes, there are lots of fields of study.
Right. Well, what I'm getting at is there's a lot of topics.
Let's put it this way, I know a lot less about welding than I do about sociology.
What I'm getting at is that you're not considered an expert in sociology, psychology, gender studies, lesbian dance theory, many of these things that you've brought up tonight.
I know a lot more about all those others than lesbian dance theory. As far as, if you want to take issue with the argument, I would urge you not to use the argument from authority, which is somebody has a PhD by their name, they know what they're talking about. That's a dumb argument.
What I'm trying to get at is that the fact that you get any other further education in any of these topics or any of these fields of study.
I don't need a 7-year degree in sociology to know bullshit when I hear it.
And granted, that's your opinion.
Right, because I'm here, yeah, giving it.
Meaning that they're also offering kind of an unqualified opinion on a lot of these topics.
See, again, you're just making the argument from authority. I don't think slapping a PhD from Ferris State next to your name makes you an expert in all things in the field in which you propose to speak. Okay, the fact is that either my argument's good or my argument's bad. Citing to my credentials is a really bad way of making an argument. It's like it's actually the equivalent of, it's so funny, when people do this, it's the equivalent of actually a religious person saying, citing to the Bible for an argument. I'm a very religious person, right? I mean, see this? This is the yarmulke, okay? I'm a religious person, okay? I never cite to the Bible. The reason I don't cite to the Bible is because that's an argument from authority. Okay, you may not believe the authority to which I'm citing. I don't believe the authority to which you're citing. So you're going to have to make me an argument as to what I'm saying that's wrong instead of just saying I don't have the properly enumerated degree from the institution of your choice. The question was, if there is unconscious bias, just to repeat it so I'm making sure I get it right. If there is unconscious bias, how does white privilege not exist?
The question is, given that there is unconscious bias, how does white privilege not exist?
So number one, when I speak about white privilege, so when I speak about white privilege, I'm speaking specifically about behavior. Okay, there have been no studies, and really I've looked at these studies, the connection between what they call implicit bias, this is their favorite phrase now, implicit bias, unconscious bias, and biased behavior has yet to be proven at any level that is even remotely necessary to be used in, for example, a courtroom, which is why it's never been used in a courtroom. It is also true that there is no way, there really isn't, there's been no proven way to alleviate what they call unconscious bias, which means that we're ghost hunting. So what I would suggest is that if there is unconscious bias, and I'll acknowledge the possibility or the reality of unconscious bias, if there is, then I need you to I don't care about what's in people's heads so much as what they do. So if you point me to a racist behavior, Don't worry, I'll let you respond. If you point me to a racist behavior, I'm happy to stand alongside you and protest it. What I can't do is protest about things in people's head that I don't know about because I'm not a mind reader.
Okay, so that's a really interesting response, and to that I have two questions. Firstly, what I've heard you say that this is something that, the way people think doesn't affect their behavior. So that's the first thing you've said. So I'm really curious if you can kind of give me another example of a thought that somebody has which doesn't affect their behavior. Like, do people who, support Trump not vote for him? Like, I'm very curious about that.
Yes.
And secondly, so the second thing that I want to ask is that if it's something it's hard to fix, does it mean we shouldn't do anything about it? Because you said, I don't know if we can change how people think. Does that mean we shouldn't try?
I mean, first of all, not a great impression. But beyond that, my voice isn't that low. But beyond that, as far as the first question, which is, do people have thoughts that don't manifest in behavior? Yes, all the time.
For instance?
For instance, every thought that you have about walking up here and strangling me right now. I assume like we have thoughts all the time that don't manifest in behavior, and this is true every single day. We consider thoughts that cross our minds. The problem with unconscious bias is the idea is you don't even know that you're having the thought, right? So how can you stop it if you don't even know that you're having it? But then we should be able to gauge the unconscious bias and its impact on behavior. That's why it's unconscious bias as opposed to conscious bias. Right? The idea behind unconscious bias is that it's not even a ghost, it's a ghost of a ghost, because you don't even know you're having the thought. So people, the whole idea behind diversity training is the idea that you can retrain people to stop their chain of thought in order so that it doesn't manifest in behavior. I don't think that every thought manifests in behavior. If it did, then every time a man saw a good-looking woman walk down the street, a straight man saw a good-looking woman down the street, we'd have a real mess on our hands. So the second question, the idea was a little too broad for me to respond to, which is, just because something is tough, don't we have to face up to it? Yes, we have to face up to tough things all the time. And one of the tough things I would suggest that we face up to is that you have a lot more control over your own behavior and the decisions you make than the supposedly widespread unconscious bias of people you've never met. If you want to go to Planned Parenthood and get a contraceptive, go for it. I don't care. I do care when you start killing babies. This is a problem for me.
But what about in rape and incest situations?
Okay, so here's the question.
It's different, yes.
This is a long conversation. I'm enjoying it, actually, which is why I'm allowing you to stay. But the question of rape and incest, first of all, important to note, rape and incest are not only a vast minority of abortion cases, they're an extraordinarily low percentage of abortion cases. So if we can first stipulate that all the other abortions are bad, then we can talk about that other one. Can we do that? Are all the other abortions bad, or are those ones okay? And you're just using this as an excuse to make the other ones okay.
No, I believe a woman should have the right to move on.
Got it. So it's an excuse, right? So it's an excuse so that we can say that, so that we can take the marginal case and then say that the marginal case applies to all cases. Okay, that's again faulty thinking. But if you want me to answer specifically on rape and incest, here is my basic answer: rapists should be castrated or killed. You shouldn't kill babies. End of story.
I don't know if I'll have time for my question, but I have an answer to a question that you commonly pose whenever the topic of institutional racism is brought up.
Sure.
You always ask, where is the institution? Show me the racist laws so that we can fight them together.
Correct.
Welcome to Alabama. This would qualify as a racist institution, the state of Alabama.
So now I go back to the question that you say that you answered, which is, show me the law. You've named an institution you don't like, now show me the law.
No, it's not an institution I don't like. I've lived here my whole life. But
you called it racist, so I assume you're not super fond of it.
Yeah, it has flaws, to say the least. But the Constitution of Alabama demands that schools be segregated by race. If it weren't for the federal government, there would only be white people in this room.
I will admit to you, okay, so a couple of fundamental assumptions, okay? I'm going to admit I have not read the Constitution of the state of Alabama, so I don't know the provision that you are talking about. I will assume that it says what you say it says for the purposes of this conversation. If in fact there's a provision in the state law of Alabama that says that segregation is mandated by law, of course that's racist, that's Jim Crow, and that would be institutional racism. The point that I'm making is that there are a lot of black people in this room today because the institutional racism that you are decrying was in fact wiped out at the legal level by the federal government in the 1960s. So if you're citing a law from 1873 or 1865, whenever the Constitution embedded segregation, if you're citing that law to prove institutional racism and that law has not been applied for 50 years, you're going to need to do better.